So as soon as they sign it, we're gonna get them going on it, and as far as review of the EAF, Carolyn's gonna, be the liaison, with AKRF, in order to get them started on this.
Yeah, so.
Okay?
So what does that mean, get them started? Are they reviewing it
Yeah,
on their
because-
own, or are they reviewing it in a public meeting with the board and?
Well,
They already have copies of the EAFs for both these projects.
so they need to review it, and then they would come in and advise us that, first thing we have to do with the EAF Part 1 is accept what Glenn Watson prepared. And so, they'll come back and see, and they may or may not have any changes to that, because that's the part that you prepared. So, if there are any changes, then we'll have you guys make changes to that. You also did a recommended Part 2, and that's our document. And so they will then advise us on what you have prepared and advise us what needs to be done to it and where that goes. So that will I would assume that would be at a meeting. We can schedule a meeting specific to your project so that it's not sidetracked with anything else. And we can go over those two parts, because that's the bulk of it. And then we go to Part 3 if there's additional stuff that needs to be prepared.
That was my question, just that takes place at a public meeting.
Yeah, it's going to be a public meeting. They're going to tell us, since they're the experts in this, they're going to tell us what needs to be done. I think that as soon as they are ready, we'll try and schedule a meeting with y'all, use the Southern term, so that we can finalize the EAF. Right.
So, and we have actually, Glenn is also reviewing it again. Glenn Watson is reviewing things on our end.
I'm sorry.
Glenn Watson,
Yeah.
who prepared it for us, is also reviewing it again to see if he is aware of any refinements that he needs to make. So it sounds like
Well,
if things are gonna move forward and we have revisions, we should get those in immediately.
I think you look for errors and omissions, basically. Sometimes you skip something and you didn't realize you skipped it.
Right.
That's a very common thing that happens. People think they don't have to answer that question, but they do. Or they do answer a question that they don't have to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a few of those kind of questions for him ourselves.
One of the things what John first picked up on is that I think in the Part 1 it said that you didn't have to go to the zoning board, and so that needs to be changed. But what I would do is gather all of the things that you have like that. And when we have this meeting, we can go over all of them at the same time.
Okay. And so basically you just via email or however you correspond with the village board, let them know your recommendation, and then do you happen to know, do they have to meet to vote on that, or?
Well, they meet every Tuesday, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
They made it at least 3 times a month, I know that.
Well, I guess if you could talk to Marie, I don't know if the village board needs to vote as a board. In other words, is it something that the mayor can sign?
I don't know. I don't know what his signing authority is.
Yeah, and that's, if you could just check with Marie and see if how that works, in light of this new procurement policy.
Okay, and we can
Alright.
follow up too through Jeff
Yeah,
and ask
I'm
him
sure
to-
Jeff will know who, what, and how.
Great, so we'll just wait to hear from you then in regards to a meeting where we'll start.
Right. Okay?
Thank you. All righty, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
This is a very quick meeting.
8:45, it's a record. Good night.
No, we can't
Thank
do
you.
these because they're questions that she has from meetings that she did not attend. That Andrea did not attend.
There were 2 meetings. There was a expedited sign meeting. Oh, I got it written down. The 2 meetings
But
I didn't
are-
attend. There was 404.
Okay, but I mean, these here.
Review those
We can go over this.
Yeah.
We can vote on
right now.
this. Okay.
Well, I
The
mean, do you want
consensus
I think Kathleen and Sean should look over them too.
Okay.
I mean, just because we have, I would love to get this off my desk, believe me. But I think we need their input because, you know,
Well,
they were there.
All right, and just,
could you recirculate them just one more time, all of them?
Online, so you
Yeah.
can edit.
Yeah,
Sure,
online, so we can edit,
Yep.
and we can get all the edits in,
absolutely.
and then we can just
Then
have a
we're
real
done.
fast vote.
Yeah, we're caught up.
Because I think this is the type of thing that we can do a lot of this stuff online, that doesn't
Well,
require.
what happened was like we created a little bit of a backlog because I would email them to everyone, but then they would like kind of get lost in the quagmire of other emails, and
I think we're gonna have to have another meeting this month, just to catch up on this administrative crap,
yeah.
you know?
okay.
But we're all
I
caught up.
mean, you
They're
can sleep
done.
late or something on a Sunday, and the rest of us will do it.
Sure.
Or you can go to church for a change.
I don't think they'll let me in. There was, I guess the only thing, and this goes back to, I still have a problem with the business about the 30 years. And,
You're looking at chapter 64.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're looking at chapter 64? You know, I mean, the 30 years I thought was a little light. I always thought that the generally accepted, view was 50.
years.
And,
That was me and Sean. There was our problem.
Well, but
well, no,
you see, here,
Kathleen
and
kind of
here's,
supported that view too. It's,
here's the reason why
Look.
I think Sean is incorrect on this.
Okay.
the village board can always change it. The village board has final, on our ordinance, the village board has final say.
I know.
Okay, we control our design standards, but they control that
Well,
stuff.
agreed, and they're raising the issue, because I forget when I read it, they were asking for 75 years. And we're talking about, I know, and so I think the issue I have with Sean's logic is that the whole point of the waiting period is to be the test of time, that you don't nominate a building as a landmark, because if it's a fashionable thing, fashions come and go, and so the question becomes, if there's, after 50 years, it's still considered a significant building, then perhaps it should be a landmark. And I think cutting it back to 30 years, and specifically from what I gathered from Sean's comment, was that he was looking to capture something which is a little bit more recent, and, so.
A more
there-
recent interest in.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I can be
I think
convinced.
that defeats the whole point of the waiting period.
Yeah, I think so too.
So,
I can be convinced.
okay.
Well, look, we can just go back to the village board and say that, yeah, our board was divided on this, but that's where we came out. But if you want to change it, change it,
See, my feeling
75, I
was-
think, is excessive, because I don't think any landmarks commission any place is 75.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's assuming it's gonna stick around for that
I think 50
long.
years is almost universal.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
think, too.
Like I said, I can be convinced. My thought was just lower it or raise it, however you say it, to 30 years, just to give us a little more influence, and that if we see something that we think is significant, because this is such a tiny, finite parcel of land we're talking about, our village. If we saw something that we felt was significant and it didn't meet the 50-year mark, and we wanted to landmark it to protect it, if it was some defining feature of our village and it wasn't quite at the 50-year mark, would we want to have that agency?
Look, if I built a brand-new building tomorrow, and I became the first woman president of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that landmark that building. But I'm never going to become the first woman president of the United States, so I mean, just.
Well, and that's,
I just wanted to give us more agency. I was
No, I mean,
coming
no,
from
I mean,
it, coming at it from a different point of
Sometimes
view.
you have things that are associated with an individual.
Right.
Sure.
But that's rare, okay?
It's
That-
rare, but what if it happens? We're in such a tiny.
Well, Butterfield Hospital was one of those.
Sure, that's
Yeah, but
exactly
Butterfield
what I was
Hos-
thinking
But
of.
Butterfield Hospital, when it closed, was already over 50 years old, the basic part of it, the core of it.
Yeah, and the thing is that I think 50 years is a lot more reasonable. And the thing is that, you know, that's a guideline we can, if we really think that it's something super special, like, Barack Obama slept in this building, you know, while visiting West Point or something like that.
Yeah.
Then, you know, fine, we can use that as a criteria and nominate it, even though it
Okay.
doesn't.
I'm just thinking about like 30 years is kind
Or
of
we can actually state to nominate it and say.
30 years might be the point in time in which a trend is completely dead. People begin to tear down those buildings.
Right.
They don't make it to 50 years. You know, like I'm thinking about, I don't know, what's a good example? I can't pull it off the top of my head at
Well,
9
but-
o'clock at
but
night.
see-
But you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
the 30-year
because-
mark is when people start to tear things down.
Yeah, because, for example.
It's
in
out of
New- in
fashion.
New-
It's
well,
not too old to be back in fashion.
Well, more than that, it actually has to do with the economics of a building, because a building is normally designed to last about 28 to 30 years.
Right.
And then you have to do a
Plumbing,
major-
electrical, all that stuff, right.
All major gut renovation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
That's
but
just
you
what
know,
I'm
but
thinking.
you look at some of the great landmarks of Europe, and none of these things are like totally intact from the day they were built. They were all
Sure.
modified, all changed, they were damaged, they were fixed, they were added on to, they were, different trends happened, they show an accretion of different styles and stuff like this. So, I mean, even if something is 30 years old and then it's modified, that modification, it may also be historic in its own way, in some
But
cases.
I'm just-
It depends upon how it was used, it depends upon how it was designed.
Yeah.
So, most of the buildings in the village have a lot of modifications to them.
I don't
You
think
know,
about
I mean,
modifications. I'm thinking about like how things are built, and I don't know, starting in the like 70s. I mean, landmarks in Europe, I would venture what you're thinking of is typically predates a lot of the stuff we have here.
Oh, yeah.
Those things were built to last. They also predate problems like electricity and plumbing. So the modifications happen, but the structure itself is sound.
Yeah, but the electricity.
it's
the
built like a
electri-
monument.
The electricity and plumbing are not things that typically we get involved with except for
But
exterior.
those are the
lighting.
things that eventually like age a structure, and people start to like tear out the walls, and and then the whole thing, they just scrap it, it's a tear down. I mean, not like any of us want to preserve a McMansion, but I'm just thinking of Anna Pilzeri's house is built with a more contemporary method of construction that may or may not go completely out of style, but her house is built. High Street, was it 15?
Mhm.
I mean, 30 years from now, do we want someone to be able to like tear it down? I mean, I know that we have a lot of provisions that protect that structure from being torn down, but I mean, and now it's a part of the village. I mean,
Well, I guess the question is that, 30 years is the point at which major infrastructure changes are usually required,
yeah,
but not always.
right.
Because, things like electricity and plumbing usually, it reaches a certain point and then you have to do major work.
Sure.
But I think that the fact that it has gone past that point, 20 years past that point, indicates that the owners or whoever owned the property saw value in it and they reinvested in the property as
Mhm.
opposed to saying, let's knock it down. But
I'm just thinking about like the second round of owner, like 30 years, kids grow up and move out of the house, people don't necessarily stay there. I'm just thinking about like the life cycle of the structure, of like a residential structure. It's like 30 years,
Well, and the thing is that if we're talking about properties in the district, then certainly you already have a a certain layer of protection. So I think that if you're talking about something outside the district, then maybe, there may be a point there, but,
And inside the district, there are other limitations besides HDRB type restrictions. There, there's the
Zoning,
zoning, there's,
right.
your lot coverage,
Right.
there's your total bulk, the.
Oh, yeah, I
stuff like
recognize that. I'm just thinking.
Even though, people take little tiny
Yeah.
houses and look like little churches.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I'm not trying to convince you, I'm just raising the point.
all right, speaking of 50 years, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Who made the motion? Me or you?
I did.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.